Welcome to this small video where I'm going to show you how to configure an Open LDAP server into your IBM Cloud Pak for integration installation. For this video, you can check the information about Cloud Pak for integration here directly on the web page. I already have an OpenShift cluster installed and it already has Cloud Pak for integration deployed, meaning we have the famous common services. I have a couple of methods of authentication. One is through the OpenShift authentication. The other one is the default one, but I'm gonna add a Open LDAP server. Now, before we get into the configuration, we have to have an Open LDAP or an LDAP server somewhere. Now, if you want to do a quick deploy for testing purposes, you can check this out. And this will guide you to how to deploy a Open LDAP server within your cluster, which is gonna behave like any other LDAP server in quite a few steps. So you only have to do these 4 or 5 steps. I already have this up and running, so we're gonna move on from here. And the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna log in with the admin username and password. So when you deployed any of the components of the Cloud Pak for integration, Common Services is going to be deployed and a username admin will be created. To get the password, you can check one of the secrets on the IBM Common Services namespace, and the secret name is platform auth IDP credentials. You copy that value and then you bring it over here, and we should be authenticating any second. Now, this is the Common Services console where you don't have an LDAP connection. Obviously, because of that, you don't have any teams, and this is a brand new installation. So from here, let's create a connection. And for my connection name, I'm gonna call it local open LDAP because it's technically clustered local. I am gonna select custom, and then for the LDAP authentication, now you should know this information if you have your Open LDAP or your LDAP server, but in case you're using the one that I have here as a demo, all the information will be on the default values that this deploys. So I already have it here at hand. So I have my base DN, and then I have my bind DN, I have my password, my LDAP server. So one thing that is important here, you have to add the port and the protocol, even if it's LDAP secure or not. I have one that it is not secure because it's internal to the cluster, it's not exposed outside. So you can see here LDAP, and then I have this host name. So this is the local domain name that you will have on services that are running within your cluster. Typically, you will see it as your deployment or my release, and then the namespace where this is running, and then SVC cluster local. So that's how this is generated. I'm gonna do a test connection just to make sure that I can connect to it, and then I'm gonna set up the filters. So as you see here, these are default filters that are created. You might want to review everything on the value. Here I am bringing the values that I have, and you can see that the group filter is the same, but the user filter is a little bit different. It's not ePerson, it's person. The other values I know that I'm the same, but I'm just gonna bring them anyway. And the last value, the group member ID, and then I am just gonna click create here, and now I have my Open LDAP connection. Now this is just the connection. I need to create the users for that, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do it. Again, this OpenLDAP chart that you can install has 4 users by default, and they're pretty simple. They're user 1 through 4, and they all have the same password. So you might want to check that if you are planning to actually use more of these in your environment. But the next thing that I'm going to do is going back to my Cloud Pak Foundation or Common Services. I'm going to come here to Teams. There is the default group already created for the admin user. So I'm just going to click Create a Team. And this team, I want to call it CP4I users. I'm just going to call it admin users. So we have a good understanding of who they are. So I'm going to use my local OpenLDAP, and then I am going to search by a group. And I know the name is, I know the name because I have it here at hand, but if you are deploying this package, you can check the name of the group in the config map. There is a seed users config map that you can review, and you can modify the users and whatnot. So I know that I want to do it's right at the bottom where it says CP4I users. That's my CN. So that is what I am gonna search here. And I'm gonna just type enter, and you can see that it found it on the LDAP. And I am gonna give them an administrator role into my Common Services. Now, actually, one of those users, one of those 4 users, I want them to be a cluster administrator, which is a whole different set of properties. And for that, I'm just going to do create a team. But I think it's worth mentioning. You can check the documentation on what each of the permissions will give you. So we have viewer, editor, auditor, operator, and administrator, and cluster administrator. So the cluster administrator is basically the same as my admin user that can do everything. You might want to do this very granular depending on what you're doing, and I hope to have follow-up videos on how to configure individual capabilities with this. But for now, I am just going to create one user that it is a cluster admin. So let's refresh this. And I am going to create a team, and I'm going to call it CP4I cluster admin. That is basically my team. And for this, I am going to search for a single user, and that is going to be user 1. It's in here, selected. I am going to give it the role of cluster administrator, and then I am going to hit create. Now I have these 2 users. How do we test this? So the easiest way would be to open an in-private browsing and try to access the cluster. So as opposed to logging into this same console, what I am going to do is I am going to come back here, and I am going to get the route of my platform navigator, which is my Cloud Pak for integration console. I am going to log in here with the admin user, the one that we use, so we can see what a cluster administrator should see as soon as this load. And in the meantime, I'm going to come back to my in-private browsing, and I am going to go to this specific URL as well. So it's going to prompt me for login. And now the first thing that you can see is now I have an enterprise LDAP option here. So I am going to click that, and I'm going to say, I want to log in as user 1, which it should have the same permissions that the admin user that I am seeing here. So I am going to log in. That is using my LDAP password, and now it's loading, it's checking all the capabilities and runtimes. So you can see here that as an admin user, going back to the overlord user that we have used. I have an ACE instance, an ACE designer, and then I have a Kafka cluster here. And if I come back here, you can see that this user 1 has exactly the same permissions. So they can see everything and they can access these capabilities within the cluster. Now, let's try it out with a new session. So I'm going to close this in private, and then I'm going to pull up another one, and I'm going to try to use any of the other users that are available. So the ones that I gave the permission as just an admin, which is this. So in this case, we have user 2. So let me bring this same console link. And I'm going to select Enterprise LDAP, user 2, and then I bring the password. I log in. And let's wait a second. And you can see here that this user doesn't have access to the capabilities administration because they're not a cluster admin. The same will happen for user 3 and user 4. You can play all this with a lot of different users. You can change the users within your OpenLDAP test environment. You can obviously review and do this in a very granular level for each of the users until you have it right, and then you can deploy it in your enterprise. So with that, some closing thoughts. It's really simple to add the configuration for OpenLDAP. It is simple to create the users and the groups. It can be based on a group on the LDAP, or it can be just individual users. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you try it out and let me know your comments.